We begin tonight with the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board's call for a comprehensive review of the recently released Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination results, which had nearly 80% of the candidates score below the 200 points minimum requirement to pass the exams. This comes after a wave of public complaints alleging technical glitches, incomplete questions, and unusually low scores trailed the release of the UTME result. According to a statement by JAMB spokesperson Fabian Benjamin, the board is expediting its annual system review, a thorough post-examination analysis to identify potential technical glitches and implement corrective measures if necessary. JAMB expressed particular concern over unusual complaints emanating from specific states within the Federation, which are being addressed. Meanwhile, a potential legal storm is brewing over the 2025 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination as thousands of candidates prepare to challenge the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board in court. The controversy stems from allegations of technical glitches and incomplete questions during the exam, which candidates claim compromised their performance. The exam's results released recently showed a staggering 1.5 million out of 1.9 million candidates scoring below 200 out of 400 mark. While the Minister of Education attributed the high failure rate to effective anti-malpractice measures, many candidates and stakeholders beg to differ. An education advocate, Alex Onya, is taking up the cudgels for the aggrieved students, announcing plans to file a lawsuit at the Federal High Court. With over 8,000 students having submitted formal complaints, Onya is demanding transparency in the marking process and seeking to have candidates verify their scores. For more on this story, I'm now being joined by Professor Yomi Fawehinmi, an academician and policy analyst. He joins me from Ontario, Canada. Thank you so much for coming on the show. What led to the widespread outcry among parents and stakeholders, prompting the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board to initiate a comprehensive review of the UTME results?
Okay, thanks for having me. A couple of things were responsible. I mean, people have, over the years, not been having very good grades from the UTME examinations. But one of the peculiarities of this year was the level of complaints that came early enough while the exam were going on. There were complaints around the timing. There were issues around those that had to start very early, earlier than they expected. JAMB tried to play an interesting game, claiming that their first exam is 8 o'clock, but their letter of invitation to these young kids were for 6 a.m. So there were issues around that. There were also issues around the technical equipment used for this exam. So there were students that claimed there were glitches, there were shut down where they were going on. There were those that even went to some centers and they couldn't write at the right time. There were issues around those that claimed that their biometrics could not be ascertained for various reasons. And then there were issues around missing questions. So there were students who, for example, on particular days of writing the exams claimed, so in particularly English, that there were some missing subjects. I also had feedback from some students who wrote physics, claiming that there was a reference to a diagram that was not there. So there were also complaints about the questions itself. So there were complaints around logistics, and the logistics are one, timing. Also the questions of location. There were those that came up with allegations that were posted outside of where they wrote their exam. If I had a particular case of somebody that registered in Ondo Town, did a mock exam in Ondo Town, but was sent to the riverine area of Ondo State to write the exams, and the parent had to follow this young lady, and they had to stay in a hotel and pay money to do that. So there were those logistics issues, and then the issues about technology, and then the third one, the issue related to the question, missing questions, missing diagrams, and things like that.
Are these complaints unusual?
I think we've always had complaints about JAMB, but I think what happened this year was the fact that the number of people that were affected were quite a lot. Also, not only were the number of people affected quite a lot, there was also a lot of people who had great grades in previous years that did not have the good grades. Now, I mean, there was a case of a particular student who had written JAMB twice and has scored well over 260. In fact, in a particular case, this particular candidate scored over 300, and in this exam was scoring 140 or 150 or something like that. So those use cases particularly made people start to wonder. And one of the dimensions of checking the validity of an exam is there's some element of consistency. So it's expected that a well-written test should provide the same results to the same students within a fixed period of time. So a child should not be getting 260, 270, 305, 304, and suddenly jumps and start to get 140 or 150.
I want us to run
Anybody who speaks that report should ask questions.
I want us to run through the statistics together. It turns out that this year's UTME results isn't even the worst in the last 5 years. 2020 recorded 85.89% failure, which was blamed on COVID disruptions. 2021 recorded 85%. 2022 recorded about 79%, which was also blamed on COVID. Then 2023, we began to see a bit of decline, 79%. Last year, 73%. And then it went up again. This year is 78.5% failure. Why do you think the candidates are rejecting the result this time around, seeing that it's not the worst in the last 5 years, actually?
Of course, just for the sake of using the right term, you don't fail JAMB. There's no pass or fail mark in JAMB. That's why the word used is either cutoff mark or minimum acceptable mark. So there's no failure in JAMB. It's not like WAEC that has an F9, that has a fail grade, that has a pass grade. JAMB, we must always remember, JAMB is a ranking exam. JAMB is not a competency examination exam. The whole purpose of JAMB is to rank people that want to go to our higher institutions. So it's like you want to know who is first, who is second, who is third, who is fourth. So there's nobody that failed or passed JAMB. You don't fail or pass JAMB. Now, why is there a lot of, you see, one thing we should be careful of is when the JAMB registrar came and said the results is consistent with the same with that. But I always ask that question. So what does that really say? Yeah, people have always been having malaria. Should we not cure malaria because people have been having malaria? We have had people die of road accidents. Should we not therefore reduce the death on road accidents? We have been having high children mortality. Should we now say, oh, because a child died, we now say, oh, okay, that's the rate we have been having? Progress in life is about we making sure things become better, quicker, faster, more efficient, and lives become better. We cannot justify failure by saying that's a trend.
Right.
We cannot also justify anything that is not expected or anything that is not good. Right. And say that it's because of that. One question we need to ask ourselves is that JAMB's motivation for writing these exams needs to really be questioned. Because if you are telling people that we have done this exam for the last X number of years, therefore, if people have been getting these relatively low marks, we're okay with it because that's what the JAMB registrar definitely say. It's also important for us to question what the JAMB registrar said because data doesn't lie. So think about this. Before this man became the JAMB registrar, if you do 10 years back, it was a better performance than from when he became registrar till now. Of course, if you take away all the effects of COVID, you realize that it's not as if people have been consistently having this low. This consistency is in the very recent past, except for 2 years that were outlier years. So when it says it's consistent with 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, I struggle with that defense and assuming that it is consistent. Life does not develop because we want to consistently have poor performance. It's time for us to ask questions. What is leading to this poor performance and what should we do about it?
Right. What do you also make of his statement, that's the Minister of Education, saying that the results, the mass failure that we have seen in the last 5 years and perhaps the one this year is attributed to tighter security by the board? What does that even mean?
I personally feel that statement to be very unfortunate. You will expect that the Minister for Education will be clear to be concerned about the level of education. I remember when he made the statement, he said by saying we are concerned, and he went on and said it's because of that. So his argument or his point is that Nigerian students don't pass except they're allowed to cheat. Unfortunately, he completely made things worse by saying that because JAMB was not allowing students to cheat, but WAEC and NECO were allowing students to cheat, that's why they passed. I really felt that statement was too definitive, because the argument there is that our students can only pass when they cheat. And that's not a fair statement to make about the almost 2 million people that write these exams every year. That's also not a fair statement to make about WAEC. Remember, it's the same work that this man said he cannot verify whether people pass or not. It's the same work that Nigerian students used to come to school in Canada and to come to school in America and to come to school here. So if our Minister for Education is demarketing the work that this foreign university has been taking, then we're in trouble. Because you remember, JAMB is only useful in Nigeria. So when this man decides to glorify JAMB and put down WAEC that has application all over the world, if I wanted to go to Stanford and I wanted to go to Harvard, I wanted to go to Wharton, or I wanted to go to University of Toronto, I'm going to use my WAEC. I mean, so it's really painful when your Minister for Education now tells the whole world that the reason why people pass that exam is because they cheat. And the JAMB exam that is only applicable in Nigeria and useful in Nigeria, you are saying is the best. It's not a fair thing to say about the performance of our students. Yes, the result is poor, but we must know why the result is poor. It's very unfortunate that we were quick to blame the student and say it's because they were not allowed to cheat. But could there be a problem with the exam itself? Could there be a problem with the curriculum? Could there be a problem with the preparation for the examination? Could there be a problem with the technology? Many things could be wrong.
I mean, CBT, the computer-based test, it's been going on since 2015. And to be fair, I think somehow they may or may not, depending on if you agree, have perfected the processes in terms of the technicality surrounding it. But JAMB has asked that these results be reviewed. They've personally come to say, okay, fine, we have received an unusual level of complaints this year, and we would like to review it. What do you make of that?
JAMB has been interesting because every year when the results of the UTME is released, there is always a review. So, you know, people have said, oh, this is the first time JAMB is reviewing results. No, that's not true. The 3 stages of the JAMB examination process, there's a review of it. So this is what has happened over the years. So JAMB is doing what it has always done. However, JAMB's claim today that because they have received a lot of complaints, they are moving the review process faster. So before now, the review will come much later in the year, but they are saying because of these complaints, we're moving it closer. So JAMB has not done anything new. The only thing JAMB has done that is new is that it has moved it closer. But my question is, should JAMB be the only ones reviewing this? Because it is JAMB that people are accusing of making a mistake. It's JAMB system that is shutting people down. It's JAMB system that is causing glitches. It's JAMB system that is disappearing questions. A student told me, a parent told me that there were 10 questions missing in his child's exam, where somebody said there was no diagram in physics, for example. So if that's the organization that has a problem, well, I expect the organization as a world-class organization, and we cannot but say JAMB has improved over the years. Right? So this is not an opportunity to bash JAMB. So, right. But every great organization should have the ability to do self-reflection, which I think what JAMB is doing. But I think beyond this, because of what JAMB agreed to, that for the first time, we're seeing a lot of complaints, and therefore, I expected the Minister for Education to set up an interdisciplinary panel to review what JAMB did. I know JAMB reviewing his work because, hey, you know the interesting thing, JAMB said they have called the Computer Association of Nigeria, they have called on Vice Chancellor, they have called on the examiners. Interestingly, many of the people JAMB is asking to review this were part of the examination process. Those Vice Chancellors were examiners, those HODs were examiners. So it's like a referee did not do a great game in officiating a FIFA match, and the referee set up.
Before I let you go quickly, would you say Nigeria is ready for these computer-based exams? Seeing that we have all these technical glitches, when people go to vote, it's the same problem. There is no internet. Something is wrong, usually wrong. Now we have a system that is supposed to judge whether a child is intelligent enough to go to university, and then you're stuck with technical glitches, and then you define that boy or girl's life for a whole year. Are we ready for computer-based exams that would define the future of our young ones?
Yes, I would say so. I would say so because of the fact that any system that can fail, we should have a corrective system. Right. I think one of the problems, one of the things JAMB should have done is that immediately people started raising these complaints. I personally sent a tweet to JAMB last week, and I said, JAMB, people are writing this exam. Before, a couple of years back, when JAMB exams are written, the results come out a long time after. Then JAMB said to release results in 48 hours. Then, under the same professor, this current CEO, JAMB released the result once in 24 hours. So after 72 hours, when the results were now, I sent a message. I said, JAMB, you guys have moved from 48 hours to 24 hours. Anybody who writes a CBT exam and the result is not out immediately, there's a likelihood that there's a technical problem or there's a human interference. My belief is that the delay that made JAMB not to release this result is evident that something was wrong, because one of the beauties of CBT is that you get your instant result. And then to talk about, are we ready? Yes, we are ready. Think about how many things we vote on online that works excellently in Nigeria.
That's
Big
right.
Brother Africa, Big Brother Nigeria is not online and people win.
Yes.
Bet Nigeria, all the betting pools are online and people win. So that's not a problem. And again, when you talk about INEC and all issues about IREV and all of that, remember at the last election, it was only the presidential election we did not have immediate upload. For the other elections, including the election I held that day, the upload was perfect. So we're ready. And it's not the time to look back, it's time to move forward. Those students are not complaining that they cannot use the CBT. It is that JAMB was not responsive enough and quickly to correct the errors as they were going. It's unfortunate JAMB waited to the end before they decided to do this. They should have listened to those students as they were coming out of the exam, were saying they were missing questions, they were missing diagrams. That's when JAMB should have responded, not wait, release the result. Because for me, it looks like JAMB really doesn't want to change. Because these complaints have been coming from the student right from as they left the exam hall. They have been going on Twitter and saying, we did not see diagram in physics. We did not see 7 questions in English language. That's when JAMB should have started to respond, not wait, mark, release result, and now say you want to investigate. What do you want to do at this point?
Right. Well, we reached out to JAMB spokesperson, and unfortunately he couldn't join us tonight, but he promised to come on the program as soon as he can. So we would like to hear JAMB's perspective on this issue. I know that they're currently reviewing the process, and we're looking forward to that conversation. Professor Yomi Fawehinmi, academician, policy analyst, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.